you'll see them for a lot of properties that got stale on the MLS, Robert. It sat on the MLS for 6 months, it didn't sell. And an auction company will pitch it like, hey, you just didn't have the right marketing team. We're going to people are going to get all excited about this auction and come and buy it. What do you think, Robert? Does that work?
Well, I think it does in some cases. You get the inexperienced buyers, the ones that are looking to invest in areas they don't know about. It's easy for them to get online and look at those properties that way on their own. When they do get stale, these auction houses like to say, look, we'll put a reserve bid on the house.
Welcome to Silberman Realty's Property Desk Podcast, Episode 4, where we talk all things residential real estate in Texas. Today is August 18th, 2025, and I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the company and your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Robert Vernon, who's our real estate agent for Silberman Realty.
How you doing?
Doing well. Good to see you, Robert. I understand we're doing a little more leasing, which is good, so the leasing market is picking up.
We had a nice little pop there at the end of summer, which is really needed because it was getting really bad there for a little while. But hey, did quite a few over the past few weeks, and hopefully this trend continues.
Good. I think the sales market is still El Stinko, but at least we're getting some activity in the leasing side of things. All right, let's talk about what we're covering on the show today. In our real estate news section, we've got a Southlake Megamansions going to auction for $15 million. And we've got a bunch of new construction planned in rural Fort Bend County in the Houston area. And then we'll be talking about Emma Stone, no longer moving to Austin. She bought a pretty spectacular property in Tarrytown. She's going to stay in Manhattan. Emma, that's okay. We didn't need you anyway. And then in our management minute, we're going to be answering the question, talking a little bit about Work Number. That's a service that helps landlords do income verification and why that's become important and what role that's playing in tenant screening. And then we'll be talking about application fee amounts. What's the right amount? How much is too much? How low is too low? How much do you need to charge in an app fee to cover your cost of properly screening tenants? And then in our Let's Get Legal section, we're talking about Senate Bill 1968, which is a TREC housekeeping bill. And brokers, before you get your broker's license, you're going to have to take a real estate course to get their license. And then we'll discuss subagency and why it is now illegal in the state of Texas, finally, after many years. So let's go ahead and get started with our real estate news section. Robert, tell us about Southlake. What do you know about Southlake? What's the feel? What's it smell like? What's it look like? Where is it?
Southlake is situated just northwest of DFW Airport. I would say it's Pleasant Town. It's very nice and clean. You have homes on big acre lots. Everything's nice and clean. You have a town area that's very walkable, nice, good, expensive shops everywhere. Basically one of the nicer areas of the DFW, that I would say.
Feels like new money, Robert.
Much, yes.
Yeah. All right, so there's some guy, seller selling this property. It's a mega mansion. This is just a fun piece to figure out what people build and why they build these things. And when you have a little bit of money and how your house ends up turning into sort of like a commercial building that's a cross between a studio, Disneyland, but for adults.
Yeah, when you drive around there, sometimes you go down these streets and you're going for 20 seconds and you're like, wow, that house is still going. And like you see some of the most bizarre things coming out the back of them. So yes, there's a lot of money out that direction.
Yeah. All right. And just because you have money, that doesn't mean you have taste. I just want to clarify that. All right. This guy's a German guy, Dirk Ulrich, and he founded a company called Brainwork, which is a music production company. Good for him. We're capitalists. We love success. Here's the house he built, and it's now for sale. 31,000 square feet. That's more of like a small commercial building there, but he's got 31,000 square feet. He had the thing listed, I think, at auction for $27.5 million last year. He's putting this thing up for auction this year, and he's going to start the bidding at $15 million. So it's quite
good luck.
Quite the haircut.
Ask Deion Sanders what it's like trying to sell one of those crazy style mansions around DFW. I think that thing sat on the market and prosper for, man, I want to say 5 to 10 years. And that was before anything was in Prosper.
When the houses get that big and that unique, you're just talking about a huge amount of illiquidity. That's the real problem.
It's enough for whoever's buying it at that point.
No.
It's just they just need somewhere to park money to show off the Jeff Bezos styles and stuff.
Yeah. And so this thing was built in 2016, 4 acres, 8 bedrooms, 11 baths. It's got a bowling alley, a gym, an indoor jump house, 3 kitchens, a wine room with 2,100 that can have 2,100 bottles. It's got a 30-foot diving pool. So if you're not happy with the regular pool and you want to do diving, you can do that. But also has a 2,000 square foot guest house. So this is the coolest thing that I thought. He repurposed the turf from Super Bowl 51 in Houston. So they took the turf from NRG Stadium and they put it in the backyard, I guess. So
that's real popular. That happening in like high schools too, and like JUCOs. They'll take turf that was used in like popular sporting football games, and they'll just repurpose them at the colleges and high schools and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense because you're repurposing turf in a stadium to be used in a stadium. This guy's repurposing turf in a stadium to be used in his backyard.
Novelty.
A Dolby Atmos 3D audio sound. So that makes sense. He's a music guy who wants a nice studio. But when you talk about these properties and how crazy they get, if you were to see Dirk Ulrich on the street, you're not going to know who this guy is.
No, he's some foreign German dude that just maybe being here from visiting from out of state, out of the country.
Dirk Ulrich can safely walk through go through any restaurant in the DFW area, not be recognized. To me, the only time this makes sense is if you really are so famous that you can't go anywhere. And if you can't go anywhere, your house has a purpose. It's a place where you can go to a bowling alley, where you can
go out within your own property. You don't have to worry about the property. Yeah, right. That's true. Right. That's a good point.
Really famous people need these kinds of things. If you're just a regular CEO or successful guy, you don't need this, okay? It's stupid. But again, we're not going to tell you how to spend your money.
That's a good point, though. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When you're a celebrity, every time you walk out the street, someone's trying to take a picture of you. You need to get out in your own place.
Deion Sanders might have needed that during his playing days. Nowadays, Deion could probably go to, maybe not the DFW area, but Deion could probably go to a lot of restaurants all over the country and not really be recognized.
I would say that for like about the 15-year period before he was the coach over at CU, and now he's back in the spotlight again. But yeah, you're right. He probably would have there for about 10 years.
Shaq cannot. Shaquille O'Neal, he had one of these things, and because Shaq does all the announcing and everything like that, it'd be hard for Shaq to go anywhere without just being asked for selfies every 5 minutes.
That look that even if he wasn't famous, if he walked into a building, someone would immediately want to look at him and get an autograph because they would assume he's famous.
Yeah, for certain. Anyway, spectacular house, interesting to talk about. I don't think you need this unless you're a famous person. Let's talk a little bit about these auctions things. This is what's interesting to me, Robert, and you may have some experience with this. You can just put this type of property on the MLS if you wanted to. Now, these properties are incredibly illiquid. There may be one unique buyer for a property that's unique. But what a lot of these people do is that let's put it on the auction. There are these companies out there that do these auction things. And I think the auction things are stupid. It's not just for big, expensive properties. You see them for everything, from bank-owned property. Do you know what like REO, real estate-owned properties are? Have you heard that term, Robert?
Yeah, they sell them every first Tuesday of the month, the courthouse.
Yes. So what happens when you have these banks that have the note on properties and they go to a real auction, a government auction that's codified by law, where you actually can go get deals where you're buying from a trustee sale, that is a legitimate auction where the bank, is going to enter a credit bid, usually for something like their loan amount. And then when the bank buys that property back, it becomes a bank-owned property known as an REO property. Now, the banks that are owning these things, banks typically don't want to own real estate. They want to lend on real estate. That's their business. And then some of these banks are stuck with them now, so they have to sell these things. And they'll usually use a realtor. They'll put it on the MLS, or they'll use like an auction company because they think they're going to get more money for them. And they'll market that it was a foreclosure. So you see them for our bank-owned properties. You'll see them for a lot of properties that got stale on the MLS, Robert. It sat on the MLS for 6 months, it didn't sell, and an auction company will pitch it like, "Hey, you just didn't have the right marketing team. People are gonna get all excited about this auction and come and buy it." What do you think, Robert? Does that work?
Well, I think it does in some cases. You get the inexperienced buyers, the ones that are looking to invest in areas they don't know about. It's easy for them to get online and look at those properties that way on their own. When they do get stale, these auction houses like to say, look, we'll put a reserve bid on the house. That way you don't get stuck selling it at a price you don't want. But if you start the listing auction price at a lower amount, it'll open the buyer pool to other eyeballs that weren't really looking at it prior in hopes that it would bid up. And you don't have anything to lose as a seller, really, or as an REO, because you have your bottom floor as a reserve. It was probably what the loan balance is.
Yeah, you're not gonna steal these things. They're gonna set a reserve, and if it's not high enough, like many auctions, they're not gonna sell it to you. I think the whole thing is just a marketing scheme.
Yeah, it is. They just use it to get more eyeballs on properties. It's like a bait and switch. Let's get the price looking lower. Yeah, and maybe the auction starts at that price, but the idea is to get it to that higher amount, somewhere probably where it is on the MLS. MLS is not going to get those different eyeballs that are looking for a deal. There's a segment of investors that want a deal and they hear auction, they hear REO, and they can't go to the courthouse. This is the way for them to try to get into that pool. They may get a deal, they may not. I've sold a few to a couple of clients of ours in the past, and they've worked out for them. But if you have to come through a lot of junk, there's a lot of junk on there.
Usually they will use the Texas Real Estate Commission contract, but then there'll be an addendum on it. That's their auction agreement, and the auction agreement supersedes or trumps anything in the TREC contract. So you have to really read that auction addendum if you're going to buy one of these. But I'm not a fan of them. It was just a unique opportunity to talk about a cool house and give people some insight on these auction processes. All right, let's move on to our next real estate news topic, and this is a big development. We talked a lot about new construction. Robert, refresh our listeners just on some of the challenges of kind of new construction and what's going on with new construction in Texas right now.
At the very moment, new construction has an inventory problem. They've got highest inventory levels, I believe, since 2007 is what I was reading the other day. And we all know what kind of happened after that. So they're struggling to move things. It's not so much interest rates as we usually think because they're offering insane incentives. In fact, builder incentives are at the highest level they've ever been, that I've ever seen, at least. And you can get interest rates at 4.99% with them, still having a hard time moving that inventory. That just tells you that the buyer pool for the lower end markets and middle to low end markets are struggling still mightily right now.
The data I have is new homes. This is on a national average year over year from June 24 to June 25, down 7%.
That's not small.
Yeah, that's new home sales. So this transaction volume, right? So not a lot of selling out there. That's a big decrease. But you've got these companies out here, and this one is D.R. Horton, a big Texas home builder, partnering with a Signorelli company out of the Woodlands to drop 1,000 new construction units on the market in the middle of nowhere.
Look, they got shareholders. They got to build. They're a building company. If they're not building, their shareholders aren't happy. So they got to find a place to stick them somewhere.
They do have their Rosen. You probably never heard of Fulsher, you're not a Houston guy. Richmond, Rosenberg, Fulsher.
I think we have a few properties that we manage out there, but not
rural Fort Bend County. It's not a bad place. It's just far. And this development's going to be 7 miles west of Rosenberg. So Rosenberg's 35 miles from downtown Houston. You're talking about a development 7 miles west of that. You could be an hour and a half in traffic easy. You can almost drive to Austin in the amount of, if you're trying to get.
Hey, maybe they are trying to target both places. Maybe they can all hear.
It's the opposite direction. This is actually going towards Eagle Lake. It's almost to you're probably closer to Eagle Lake than you are downtown Houston. I haven't looked out on a map, but 359 acres. They're going to call it Holly Ridge. I wish they'd come up with some better names for these places.
Every street's going to be named after some Emmy star or
just the neighborhoods. Are just the names of these neighborhoods. What was the movies always have these master plan communities. They always come up with these cheesy names. It's like they took this thing from some cheesy development. It's Holly Ridge. How many Holly Ridge developments are there across the country? But
I mean, they have the Disney streets in Dallas, where each street is a different Disney movie.
okay, running. It was a slow day at the think tank for the developer that day. Here's their angle. All right, the median home price, according to Redfin in Houston, is about $350,000. That's in July. They're going to release some units starting at 300,000. So they're going to be under median. They're going to undercut the market, but they're going to be in a very far away place. Okay.
I mean, if you're very far away from the city, the average income is going to go down to make sense for it to be that price.
You ever heard of the acronym BFE? Have you heard that term?
Yeah, I have.
This is a family friendly show, so we're not going to talk about what.
That's what I didn't want to say.
But it's very far away Egypt, right?
Yes.
Is what it is. And having a Jewish background, it reminds me that Egypt, the Hebrew word in Egypt, which is actually Mitzrayim, which is like literally translates to wilderness. So I think some of these places we're going to call the development 7 miles west of Rosenberg, as we should call it wilderness. So
that's wilderness.
That's what we should call it. All right. So Greater Houston is one of the biggest markets for master plan communities in the country. So
it's one of the biggest markets in just land also.
Right. Got a lot of land. Developed. All right. Next topic. We're going from Rosenberg back up to Austin. Let's get up to Austin. You ever heard of a neighborhood in Austin called Terrytown?
Oh yeah, isn't that like the old, like a Victorian style neighborhood over in Old Austin?
I don't officially know if it's Victorian, but some of the houses may be a Victorian style.
More craft style,
that would make sense from a time period. It's one of the older neighborhoods in Austin, very close in. There was a mansion there. Emma Stone. I had to look up who Emma Stone was. Okay. She's an actress. She's famous for La La Land and Cruella, the Disney Cruella. And
don't forget about Spider-Man.
Yeah. The 2012 Spider-Man movie. So this was in 2021. She lives primarily in Manhattan in New York. Post in the middle of COVID, I'm sure she's tired of being in Manhattan in the middle of COVID. She decides she wants to move the family to Austin. She buys a big house built in the 1940s, 7-bedroom, with the intention to restore the property. It was purchased off market, so we don't know how much she paid for it. She decided she does not want to move to Austin. She's going to stay in Manhattan. And she is now asking $23.5 million for this property. She had it listed for 26.5. It's the most expensive listing in Austin. The second most expensive listing is $19.5 million.
There's a lot of bag holders who bought in Austin, unfortunately.
Oh, Austin.
I mean, that was one of the biggest run-ups you've ever seen in the housing market, and decline. Decline. It's unfortunate what's happening in Austin, but yeah, sorry, Emma, but just like you and a bunch of other people got caught in the hype, and unfortunately you're going to have to pay the piper in the end.
1.24 acres, county records. She did start some renovations. The county records show that she did about an $11 million renovation job since they bought the home. Here's what's surprising to me. The taxable value on the appraisal district is just over 7.3 million, even though despite the listing being offered for sale at 22.5 million. Now, that could be, Robert, you may know this, the appraisal districts are supposed to reassess value on January 1st. So maybe all the renovations were done after January 1st. I don't know, but this is really what this highlights to me. Are you familiar with kind of the ad valorem tax benefits of renovations versus buying resale or buying new construction, Robert? Are you familiar with that at all?
Not really, outside of maybe that if you just renovate a house and the house is older, you probably get a better tax benefit than it being a brand new construction home, a new construction pricing. It's probably something with the algorithm with the property taxes on that one.
That's basically the idea. Is if you buy an old home and you renovate it, you're going to do better. You're going to pay lower property taxes. If you buy resale, it's like magic. Your property always comes in almost right exactly what you paid for it. I don't know if they still do this, but the appraisal districts used to send the seller a little card that says, please tell us how much you sold the property for.
Never fill that out. That is rule number one. Your agent should always tell you to never fill that out.
What?
However, a lot of the MLS data is posted. They can see that. But Texas
Yeah.
is a non-disclosure state, so you don't have to disclose the price that you paid for something. You do not want to let the tax office know that you.
If you're the seller and you're just spiteful, you may want to let the appraisal district know.
Oh man, that'd
Yeah,
be a terrible move by that person. Hey,
they do that. People are mean. I think the seller could lie. I would tell the appraiser, you can't verify that. The seller, had a bias to make it seem as though he sold his property for a lot more than it was.
oh man, that would be
you know,
rough.
But yeah, the idea is if you buy resell, they're usually going to know because they somehow get the data, right? Now they're supposed to use mass appraisal standards, so they're not able to really accurately specific properties figure it out. Those mass appraisal standards seem to work a lot better with resale homes. If you build a new construction home, usually you'll just go in and you'll disclose and certify what you built it for, and then that will be your value. But for whatever reason, with renovations, it's a good deal. And I know a lot of people that what they do instead of build new construction, Robert, they'll just take the property down to the studs and the slab, and then they'll start from there and basically build a brand new house on an old slab with some old studs.
Those are probably better.
Probably. And then they get the lower tax values based on renovation. It's a good, in Texas, our property taxes are so high. It is a limiting factor to our values. It's really a problem.
Yeah, something's got to be done with that for sure. Because it definitely makes it tough.
So hot tip, just get the renovation could be the way to go. And FYI, Emma's staying in Manhattan, and according to Realtor.com, her place in Manhattan is worth about 12 million. So I think she's doing okay, Robert. She's okay.
Fine.
All right. She had some other houses too that I think she flipped and made some money. All right. That brings us to our management minute. Let's talk about some property management stuff, Robert, because we are primarily a property management company.
Yeah, we are.
Tell the listeners, what is this? So someone a tenant applies for a property, right? And you're the guy at our management company that's screening these tenants, and they're supposed to submit income verification for you, right? Like they're supposed to tell you how much they make and that kind of thing. Tell us what is going on and what is this thing called work number? How's that working?
Well, a lot of companies, especially bigger companies like State Farm, Allstate, they got tired of doing employment verifications. And so I guess somebody created this company called the work number. And landlords have to pay to get verifications on their employees now. They won't just let you know if they continue work there or not from their manager. They want everything to go to this particular company. It's costly. Our application fee process has already gone up with just inflation alone, just the cost of getting reports back. And so it's just another layer on top of layers that we have to charge onto our applicants to make sure that, where they work is actually correct.
Why can't you just ask the applicant and trust them?
Yes, that would be great. In a perfect world, my life would be a lot easier if I could do that. Unfortunately, I get a lot of false information, or somebody did work there, they just got fired. How do I know they still work there? And so now I have got to go use this work number situation. And some of the cons to this is that some of that information is old and it may not be updated in real time. And so even though I'm having to pay a fee to know if this person still works there, I don't know how long that information has been sitting there or when it was put in there. Maybe they got fired yesterday. I don't know if their docket, if they have somebody that has to input that like once a month. And so it's a lot better when you can talk to the actual managing person of or somebody at the office that's local that can say, yes, they're in here working today, something like that.
In the old days, when I would do it, we would just get their pay stubs, right?
But they're so falsified now. They've gotten so good.
No, it was very rare back in the old days. They would pay a company to falsify pay stubs or something like that. But now that's just become like commonplace to falsify pay stubs. So you can't really trust these tenants giving the stubs to you. So the common fraud that we're trying to fight against, Robert, is you will just get people that are basically criminal. They'll apply to the property. Their intention is to only pay the first month's rent and the security deposit. and they've got falsified pay stubs, falsified, sometimes just they're completely falsified identities. They get into the property and they know it's going to take 3, 4, 5 months for us to evict them. So they stay that long as they can, and they get all this free rent, and then they just move to the next place.
And they've got somebody online or someone out there coaching them how to do this. I see the patterns from doing this for 15 years. I've noticed the pattern that you're getting with these types of applicants. There's a routine to it. And it's unfortunate for a lot of companies that are smaller that use pay stubs that look like they were put on Google worksheets or Google, and they might be real. It's unfortunate because it does put my skepticism hat on instantaneously because of all the stuff that I've had to deal with. And I tell you what, since COVID, we've had more fraud than I've ever seen come through with people who just have enough money to get in, and then you never hear from them again.
The prices skyrocketed, right? The rental prices skyrocketed, and we talked about housing affordability last month on the show. And these tenants are struggling to afford the houses. So I'm sure they're doing everything they can to get in, which is, unfortunately, it's criminal and fraudulent. But so this thing, work number, right? The companies put all of their data with work number. Work number gets to charge a fee to the landlord, and then the landlord pays it for verification. How much does work number charge?
It depends on what kind of package you have on them. So if you do low volume, like I would say we do on theirs, it could be up to $50 a click. Every time I want to click
$50 to get a verification. And our application fee was what, $75?
It's $75. And then to run the background check is 90% of that. And so there's nothing left. And that should have been part of the background check.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we tried increasing the application. This brings us to our next question. What's the right application fee to charge? Because we were charging $75, and then that's a pretty normal, you said it's an average application fee, or what do you think the average application fee is out there?
It's about $75, $55, depending on where you go, what kind of company it is, and how big they are.
Yeah. So we use this one service called Appfolio, which is our big property management software. And Appfolio charges us. So they had some add-on where I think we were paying, we were supposed to get work number and all this other stuff. And we ended up having to charge $125 for the app fee. And you noticed a significant decline in applications when we raised the app fee.
Significantly, yeah. That was actually very difficult because there's enough people that use the work number where I need to charge that out. Not enough to where we can blanketly charge $125, especially when we have properties that are $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month. It's a huge amount, especially when we have 2 or 3 adults living in the property. It was definitely a deterrent.
I lost touch with just how sensitive people are to application fees.
Yeah.
And that lesson learned, 75, I guess, is average-ish. And that's what we're back to.
It's about the high-end average that I think the market will take. Yeah. Obviously, because of all the apartments, they do them a lot cheaper. They have a big volume, like companies like Greystar. They do so much volume, they can get these things at a much cheaper price. So they can pass that off a little bit more.
Yeah. Lesson learned, 120. Once you go over that 75, you start affecting a lot of people that are applying for some not lower end, more affordable housing. So got to really keep your finger on the pulse of what an appropriate app fee is there. All right, let's talk about our legal section. We call it Let's Get Legal, and we're going to discuss Senate Bill 1968, which is a TREC housekeeping bill, the Texas Real Estate Commission housekeeping bill. And starting in January, brokers are going to have to take a real estate course if they want to get their license. Now, under the old law, under the previous law, if you're a sales agent, not a broker, you just needed some experience and you completed some real estate work. So when I got my broker's license, Robert, many years ago, you just had to be licensed for 2 years and you went in and take the test. Then under the current regime, you have this point system where everything you do, you earn points and your broker has to certify it or something like that. But now they're going to say, all right, we want you to take another course and then take the test. And brokers also have to take this responsibility course as well every time they renew their license. So I think TREC is behind the times on this. What do you think, Robert? You like these changes? You think TREC's doing good work? We need this, or what's your opinion?
I don't think TREC's doing good work. I think they're constantly trying to put more blockades in place to make our jobs harder and actually more confusing for the consumer. conversations I've had to have over the past year explaining the new laws and why they have to sign certain things has been pretty problematic.
Here's what I think about it. TREC is behind the times. I don't know if you have friends that are real estate agents, but Robert, I think what they're all doing is when they're renewing their licenses, they're just like using Chat GPT and AI to cheat it all, right? I'm not sure how making the person who's wants a broker's license take a new online course is going to really help anything, because they're just going to cheat it with AI. So
The day you shouldn't have a broker's license unless you've done experience. Hey, every one of y'all just keep walking in here through this and making noise.
well, so at the end
Well,
of
it's
the
a little
day,
late now.
all right. So, I think TREC's behind the times. I think everyone's just going to take these online courses with AI, use Chat GPT. Are you hearing of agents doing that, or what do you think?
Yeah, at the end of the day, if the broker does not have a lot of hands-on experience, they really don't have any business being a broker. You can't learn this industry just from a textbook and taking classes. It takes some hands-on. You got to practice. It's practice real estate. And if you don't have enough practice under your belt, then you're not going to be able to effectively broker somebody.
Here's what I think needs to happen. They need to go back to these paper exams. And in college, they're all doing these oral examinations. And remember a blue book? If you're ever in college or high school, you'd have this like blue book where you would write your essay in. A lot of the colleges are saying, hey, no more laptops. We don't trust them. You come and you take the test with a blue book and write it down. Now, I think that's probably what we need to go to with TREC and some of these exams and some of these online courses. If you're really trying to force people to educate themselves, because I think they're just going to use the AI to cheat.
Well, I mean, if you take a broker test or a real estate test, you're sitting at a computer with a camera right on you. You can't have anything open. So, I mean, you can't cheat it. But at the end of the day, anybody can take a test and learn something out of a book, but actually practicing it in real life, that's the real.
That's why they still have the experience component. And I forgot that I guess they are going to a place where it's not like they can just access Chat GPT. And I suppose there's a proctor there. If someone were to pull out their phone and try using Chat GPT on their phone, they would catch them. But
you probably know that broker requirement to have actual experience wasn't always in place. But that's a newer thing sometime in the last 10 years. So you still have brokers that probably have just been renewing their license from the early 2000s, 1990s that haven't really done much since the fax machine, but still call themselves a broker in today's world.
Yeah. All right. Change on the education. So if you want to get a broker, you're going to have the experience, and you're going to have to take a new course. TREC thinks that's a good thing. The other part of this new Senate bill that's taken effect in January is subagency has finally been made illegal. Subagency is a loosey-goosey term. We think it occurs like if you're a real estate agent and you represent the seller, but then you just start showing the buyer the property. The idea being that you're the seller is the principal, you're an agent of the seller, and then another agent comes along, okay? And then that agent doesn't represent the buyer, but rather, well, if he doesn't represent the buyer, then who does that agent represent? So we just say he's a sub-agent of the seller. That's subagency in a nutshell explained. It's supposed to give consumers this idea of subagency being illegal. It's supposed to help consumers get better representation. And the change is supposed to give consumers a clear understanding of who represents them. I thought the IABS, the information about brokerage services, Robert, tell the listeners a little bit about what an IABS is and how that's used.
IABS is a document that you have to give to any prospective seller or buyer at first communication, just representing what a realtor is and their role in the transaction. Not necessarily telling you that you represent them with the IABS, but what your role as the agent is.
Yeah. And I have information about brokerage services, but apparently they're trying to tighten this up. The other big thing, and I think this is bigger news, Robert, is now as part of this Senate bill, this new Senate bill, you have to have, if you're doing buyer's representation, you have to have a written agreement to go and show a buyer. And that written agreement's got to tell the agent expressly who you represent, and it's got to say that commissions are negotiable. This is a byproduct of that realtor anti-competitive laws. And we talked a little bit about this with the rule change. The local boards have rules that mirror this, right, Robert?
Yeah, so this is the biggest thing that came out of the NAR settlement was who pays who in the transaction, and let it be disclosed up front before we even open the door property to even be considered. It's been a challenge for consumers to really understand because we've had one way of doing things for so long. So it's been definitely a challenge to get the consumer to understand why we have to do this and what it actually represents.
I'm not sure what this is going to look like, really. I guess if you're out there trying to do buyer's rep, you're just going to have this one-page form that says, hey, I represent you, I don't represent you, and by the way, commissions are negotiable. So sign this and let's get in the car and start looking at houses. Is that maybe that's what it's going to look like? I don't know.
Basically what it does look like right now. Yes.
All right. That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silverman. Robert Vernon has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice or investment advice, and this has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you have a question about real estate or something you'd like us to discuss or cover in the show, email us at info@silvermanrealty.com. Tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a great week.
All right, have a good one.